Every financial system says the same thing when trouble appears. There's no real problem. This is temporary. We're monitoring the situation. History shows something else. Before systems fix anything, they hide it, and by the time they admit the truth, the damage is already done. Welcome to Wheelixon, and where history isn't just remembered, it's used to understand how money, power, and systems quietly break. Every financial crisis feels sudden only because people remember the ending, the crash, the speeches that come afterward. But applied financial history tells a quieter, more uncomfortable truth. Financial systems don't collapse because problems appear. They collapse because problems are managed, reframed, and delayed for too long. Before every major breakdown, the same pattern repeats. First, the problem emerges. Then it gets minimized. Then it gets renamed. Only much later does it get addressed. By that point, the cost is far higher than it ever needed to be. The instinct to hide problems is not corruption. It's structural. Banks rely on trust. When confidence disappears, systems don't just wobble, they freeze. So when early signs of stress appear, institutions don't rush to fix them. They rush to contain perception. Because fixing problems is expensive, history shows this clearly. Before the Great Depression, warning signs were everywhere. Excessive margin debt, speculative leverage, markets were described as fundamentally sound. The goal wasn't deception. Admitting the scale of the problem risked triggering panic. And panic was considered worse than imbalance. So imbalance was allowed to grow. Before the 2008 financial crisis, housing stress didn't come out of nowhere. Mortgage quality declined for years. Loan standards eroded quietly. Debt piled onto borrowers with stagnant incomes. But institutions didn't call it a crisis. They called it innovation. Risk was distributed. Exposure was diversified. The system didn't fix the problem. It renamed it. And renaming bought time. Problem recognition without problem acknowledgement. Data shows stress. Internal reports raise concerns. Some insiders quietly worry. But public messaging stays calm, because once a system publicly admits a problem, it loses control over the timeline. Markets react faster than institutions can respond. So denial isn't loud. It's polished. The second stage is reframing. Problems are no longer described as structural. They become cyclical, temporary, localized. Inflation isn't systemic. It's transitory. Debt isn't excessive, it's manageable. Bank stress isn't dangerous, it's contained. These phrases are not random. They are tools. They buy time. They preserve confidence. Applied financial history shows that reframing works best when complexity is high. The more complex a system becomes, the easier it is to hide problems inside it. Modern finance thrives on layers. Derivatives on top of derivatives. Securities built from other securities. Models based on assumptions built on older assumptions. When something breaks, it's rarely obvious where. Complexity creates ambiguity. Ambiguity delays accountability, and delay feels like stability. The third stage is intervention without resolution. When problems grow too large to ignore completely, systems don't fix them, they manage them. Interest rates are adjusted, liquidity is injected, rules are temporarily changed, emergency tools are deployed. Each action is framed as precautionary. But precaution is not correction. History shows that these interventions often treat symptoms, not causes. They smooth volatility, they stabilize markets, they prevent immediate collapse, but they leave the underlying imbalance intact. Data stops being used to discover truth and starts being used to defend stability. Statistics are adjusted, definitions evolve, because raw truth can destabilize fragile systems. And fragility increases the longer problems are postponed. Inflation is one of the clearest examples of this behavior. Inflation is not just rising prices. It's a signal that promises exceed resources. But modern systems don't present inflation as a systemic warning. They smooth it. They exclude volatile components. They average outcomes. The result is not false data. It's incomplete truth. Enough truth to function, not enough to alarm. The same applies to debt. Governments rarely default openly today. They restructure. They redefine sustainability. History shows that debt crises are no longer events. They are processes. Slow, managed, distributed over time. Truth isn't denied, it's delayed, and delay reduces resistance. This behavior intensifies when institutions believe collapse would be worse than distortion. If revealing the problem risks triggering bank runs, capital flight, or social unrest, leaders choose opacity. They don't ask, what is true? They ask, what is survivable? That question defines late-stage systems. One of the clearest signs that truth is being postponed is rule changes during stress. Rules exist to create predictability, but when predictability threatens stability, rules bend. These actions are often necessary, but historically, they also signal that the system has entered survival mode. Normal transparency no longer applies. Another recurring pattern is moral hazard. Once institutions expect support during failure, behavior shifts. risk increases. History shows this before nearly every crisis. Participants take chances because consequences feel distant, and distance creates fragility. Here's the paradox. The closer a system gets to breaking, the calmer it often looks. Markets function because the tools used to suppress instability also suppress warning signals. Truth is still present, but it's muffled. Eventually, reality finds other ways to speak. Black markets emerge. Parallel pricing appears. Capital quietly leaves. Skilled labor migrates. These are not dramatic moments. They are pressure leaks. History shows that when official truth is constrained, unofficial truth expands. And once unofficial truth spreads, confidence collapses quickly. At that stage, systems face an impossible choice: reveal reality and risk immediate instability, or preserve stability and accept long-term distortion. Most choose stability because instability threatens authority, legitimacy, and control. Truth threatens comfort. This is why collapses often feel managed rather than explosive. Living standards decline gradually. Opportunities narrow quietly. Access replaces ownership. Debt replaces savings. Applied financial history teaches that collapse is rarely a moment. It is a sequence of decisions. Each decision makes sense on its own. Together, they build fragility. This pattern isn't limited to governments. Corporations do it. Banks do it. Entire markets do it. Whenever incentives reward short-term stability over long-term accuracy, truth becomes negotiable. This doesn't mean systems are evil. It means they are human, built by people, constrained by fear of disorder. History doesn't moralize these systems. It documents what follows. Eventually, the cost of hiding the problem exceeds the cost of fixing it. At that moment, correction happens rapidly, not because leaders choose it, but because reality enforces it. Assets reprice. And afterward, narratives change. No one saw it coming. It happened suddenly. We did our best. But applied financial history tells a different story. The signs were there. They were simply delayed. Understanding this pattern doesn't make someone immune to crises, but it changes perspective. Instead of asking, why did this happen? You start asking, how long was this being postponed? That question reveals more than any forecast. It is realism. It recognizes that stability has a cost, and that cost is often truth. When truth is delayed, interest accumulates. Eventually, it must be paid. They fail when reality no longer fits the story being told. Panic comes later. If you understand this, you stop chasing headlines. You stop reacting to events. You begin watching behavior, and behavior reveals more than numbers ever will. If you want to understand money and power beyond headlines, subscribe to Wheelixon.